Right now, I have a simple Rails app working locally. I want to get this app working on my production servers. I will be using Heroku. So let's start setting up the app to work with Heroku. Heroku needs to know what version of Ruby I'm using. Open terminal, type Ruby V. I'm using version 2.3.0. In Sublime, open your gem file, and then on line 3, I'll just type a comment that says Heroku should use this version of Ruby. And then I'll specify the version by typing Ruby space, and in between two single quotes, I'll type my version, which is 2.3.0. I now need to tell Heroku what database gem to use. Locally, I will continue to use SQLite 3. However, on my production server, Heroku uses PostgreSQL. I need to add the PostgreSQL gem to the gem file. So under gem SQLite 3 on line 8, type on line 10 another comment. I'll say Postgres for production database. And then I'll type gem, single quotes, PG. And that's the gem for Postgres. To set SQLite 3 as the database for test and development, type comma, group, semicolon, square brackets, another semicolon, development, comma, test, and then I'll have a comment above that just says SQLite 3 for development and test database. To set Postgres as the production database, type gem pg, comma, group, production. Lastly, I need to set the gem for Rails 12 factor. All you need to know is that Heroku needs this gem to work. Type on line 14 a comment. I'll say 12 factor for Heroku, typing gem Rails underscore 12 factor, comma, group, production. I'm going to sum up what I did to this gem file. I specified what version of Ruby I'm using. I then set the database for development and test to SQLite 3. I also set the Heroku production to Postgres. Lastly, I added the Rails 12 factor gem for Heroku. So save the gem file, open database.yaml. I'm using Postgres for the production database, so delete everything from production on line 23 all the way down to line 25, and then save. Open terminal and run bundle install without production. This installs all gems in the gem file. I'm running bundle install without production because when I push the app to Heroku, Heroku bundle installs automatically. Then run git status git add dot to add all the files modified to the staging area. Then run git commit -m. I want the local project to work online. Heroku will put the local project on the internet so it can be accessed from any device. First, you need to sign up for a free Heroku account. Once you've done that, the local app is ready to be pushed to Heroku. However, I need to download the Heroku command line interface. So go to this URL, go to download and install, then download the version of the Heroku command line that corresponds to your operating system. I've already done this. Open terminal and run Heroku login. Enter your Heroku email address and password. My authentication was successful. I'm going to create an application in Heroku. I need to give this app a unique name, so I'll run Heroku apps create and my unique name, Learn Rails Blog. I called my Heroku app Learn Rails Blog. You will have to come up with your own unique name. Run this command. Now that I've created my Heroku app, I could use Git to push the local app to Heroku servers. We can then see the site live. To push the app up to Heroku, run git push Heroku master. Heroku automatically created a URL for my app. My Heroku app's URL is learnrailsblog.herokuapp.com. We can change the domain name later. Copy your Heroku URL and paste it into your browser. Great! Hello World is displayed. This is the same as my local site. Now the site is working on Heroku and is live on the internet. This is a great starting point. We're going to add some style to the page. In the head, add your opening and closing style tag. This tells the browser that everything inside the style tags is going to be CSS rather than HTML. Inside the style tag, type body, opening and closing curly bracket, and set the background to blue. Make sure you have a colon and semicolon, just like I do. Don't worry, all this code will be attached to the video. Save index.html. We're telling the browser that everything in the body, that is, everything between the opening and closing body tags, should have a background of blue. So let's give it a try. Open index.html. You should have a blue background like this. We could use CSS to target other elements as well. Let's change the font color of this H1 tag that says Hello World to white. We could do a similar thing that we did for the body. So to make the H1 tag have a white font, type H1 color white. Save index.html, then refresh the home page. You can see that the header 1 tag is now white. We all make mistakes, so you may run into some errors as you go. Text editors, such as Sublime, try to help you figure out those mistakes by adding color to the text. I'll be using Sublime. This can help you look for mistakes because you may notice pattern breaks in text. For example, if you miss a curly bracket, notice how this CSS is white and this CSS is blue. Other mistakes, like missing out a colon, will make the CSS white. As you use Sublime more, you'll get used to how the color coding should be, and I'll help you pick up on coding errors. But just so you know, this space between the elements isn't that important. You can format it any way you want. I just chose to have mine like this. But you don't have to worry too much about this because all the code will be attached to the videos. Let's change a few more properties. Let's change the text color of the body to white. Because the font will be set to white for the entire body, I don't need to specify for this H1 tag anymore. So I'll just delete that bit of CSS from line 10 to 12. Save index.html, refresh index.html. Now all the font in the body is white. We can also change the font size of the header 1 tag. We can adjust font size in pixels. So let's try changing the header 1 font size to 60 pixels. Save index.html and refresh your browser. Now the header 1 tag is bigger because we set the font size to 60 pixels. You could play around with the font size and see what you like. So just remember that CSS allows us to style our page after writing our HTML content. Going forward, keep in mind that HTML gives your website structure and CSS gives your web page style to make your web page look the way you want. We now have our HTML and CSS. Let's add some JavaScript. For our JavaScript, we'll need an opening and closing script tag in our head. Then let's type some JavaScript. Type alert and in double quotes, a pop-up. Save index.html. Refresh your browser. You'll get this pop-up. Click OK to exit out of it. If you refresh the page again, you'll see this pop-up again. This is a simple example of JavaScript. JavaScript is the behavior of the site, how things move, behave, and animate. In summary, HTML gives structure to your content. CSS styles it, and JavaScript is the behavior of the site. We can use all three of these front-end languages at the same time. Organization is an important part of being a developer. I'm going to show you some tips on organizing your files. First off, your files should be named and organized into folders. So I'm going to create a new folder, and I'll call it views. Then I'll drag index.html into views. Open this views folder and create another folder inside. I'll call this folder images. Then I'm going to drag these animal photos into the images folder. Drag index.html into Sublime to open it. We don't need this JavaScript anymore. I just wanted to illustrate to you what JavaScript does. Delete this JavaScript for the pop-up. Also delete the body CSS. We don't need this right now. Now when I refresh the page, I don't get that pop-up anymore. Let's display these images on the web page. Again, all these images and code will be attached to this video. First, let's render the bird photo. Open index.html. In the body, under the header2 tag, add an image tag and have the source equal images slash, and in this case the image name is bird.jpg. For the image tag, you don't need to add a closing tag. It's one of the few where you don't. To add the cat image, copy the image tag and paste below, then get the name of the cat image, which in this case is cat.jpg. I'm going to add another h2 tag to index.html. So copy the first h2 tag on line 14 and paste above the second image on line 16. Make the first h2 tag say bird photo. The second h2 tag will say cat photo. I also added some alternative text. Alternative text is just the text that will be displayed if the image can't be successfully rendered by the browser. So make sure you've saved index.html and refresh your home page. You will see both my images are rendered under their respective header2 tags. Just to be clear, img stands for image and src stands for source. The source equals the path to the image that you want displayed. In this case, we're in index.html, so the source starts in the views directory. A directory is the same thing as a folder. It's just terminology. Then the source equals the path to the image that we want displayed. So for the case of bird.jpg, from index.html, it goes into images and then it connects to bird.jpg. The source is similar for cat.jpg, except I changed the file name. One thing to note, if you wanted the source to go to a file that's in a directory back, you would type // So by typing // this now looks outside of the views directory into the desktop, then goes into images looking for cat.jpg. But because that path doesn't exist, the image wouldn't render and the alternative text would render instead. I'll show you that. Saved index.html and you get the alternative text cat photo because this path in index.html is going back a directory and doesn't exist. So to fix that, we're going into images, then cat.jpg. In this tutorial, we adjusted the CSS style of our web page. We then added 2 photos and then displayed them with correct image tags. I also explained how the source path works. I'm going to make an About page. In Sublime, click File, New File, and save it in Views as About.html. I'm going to outline the basic structure of an HTML page. Again, all of these files will be attached to this video. So first, copy everything in index.html. Paste it into about.html. Delete everything in the body from line 12 to 17. Delete the style tag from line 4 to 8. And then change the title to About on line 4. Save about.html. I'm then going to add a link to a style sheet, and the path to the style sheet will go into a folder called CSS and find the file style.css. I'll make the folder and the file in a bit. Make sure you have your link just like this. You don't need a closing link tag, just like you didn't need a closing image tag. But for everything else, you do need to close your open tags. Just remember that you don't need a closing tag for links or photos. In the body, add a division tag. Make sure you close it. Give this division tag a class name equal to container. I'm now adding a comment. This won't be rendered by the browser. It's just helpful to remind yourself. Everything in between this less than and greater than sign is a comment and won't be rendered by the browser. Let's create the CSS folder. Open Views, and inside Views, create a new folder. Call it CSS. Go back into Sublime, hit File, New File. Save this file in CSS as style.css. Save about.html. This link to the style sheet will now work because it's going from index into the CSS folder, finally linking to the file style.css. First, I'll add some CSS that will only apply to content in the body of index.html. I'll then add some CSS that will only be applied to this div class called container in about.html. Open style.css and I'll show you what I mean. First, to add some style to the body, type body, an opening and closed curly brackets. I'll set the line height to 1, and then I'm going to add another comment. There's different ways to add a comment. This way, everything in between these slashes and stars won't be rendered by the browser. And I'm just going to remind myself that this will be the CSS that creates a full page background. Then type background size, and I'll set it to cover, and I'll have a background position set to center. Finally, background attachment will be fixed. Don't worry too much about this CSS. Just know I'm using this to create a full page background. Now I'll add some style to the div class container. So in style.css type .container, and then inside your curly brackets, I'll set a width of 800 pixels and a margin of 50 pixels. The main thing to remember with CSS is the correct formatting, like making sure you've included your semicolons and colons. To add style to the div class, you need a dot before the class name. So in this case, the class name for the div was container, so I added dot container. So that's what I did on line 10, and then set the width and margin of the container. I just want to make clear that you could have called this class anything. It doesn't have to be container. I just chose the name container. But then you would have to change how you access that div in style.css as well. So just remember, you can call the div class whatever you want, but you have to be consistent with your naming. So save style.css. In the next one, we'll continue working on the about page. Now that you know the fundamentals of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, let's create another project from scratch. To begin, on your desktop, create a new folder and call it Learn App Code Project 1. I want to be able to view all my files in Sublime. I'll make a new Sublime project. So in Sublime, click on Project from the top navigation bar, then click Save Project As, navigate to your desktop, and then click on Learn App Code Project 1. I'll save this as project1.sublime-project. Click Save, then click Project from the top nav bar and hit Add Folder to Project. Click on your Learn App Code Project 1 folder and hit Open. Now everything from this folder is in the sidebar. Let's work on the site's homepage. In Sublime, hit File, New File, and save in Learn App Code Project 1 as index.html. I'm going to paste in my basic HTML structure, and again, all of this code will be available for you to download. So I have an h1 tag, a header2 tag, and a paragraph tag. These tags are inside a division tag that I named container. I'm also linking to a style sheet called style.css inside a folder called CSS. So let's make that folder. In Learn App Code Project 1, hit New Folder, call this folder CSS, and then in Sublime, hit File, New File, and save in Learn App Code Project 1 CSS as style.css. I'll paste in the basic CSS that we started to put together last time. I'll come back to the CSS later. So just remember, by putting text in an h1 tag, I'm telling the browser that this is the most important information on this page. Also remember to open and close your HTML tags. And again, the closing tag has this backslash. So let's see what this homepage looks like. Double click on index.html to open in your browser. The information is displayed correctly. In the next video, we'll add images and links to the homepage. Let's add a YouTube video link to the homepage. So in Sublime, make sure index.html is open, and then copy the URL for a YouTube video you like. Then underneath the header 2, I'm going to add an A tag. A tags act as links. So to link to the YouTube video, I need to set the href equal to the YouTube video URL. So I'll just paste my YouTube video URL in. I'm just going to display the title of the song. Using an A tag lets the browser know that this is a link. The href attribute of the A tag indicates the target of the link. In this case, the URL to this YouTube video. Save index.html and refresh your homepage. Great, now I get this link. Click on the link. Awesome, we now have a link to a YouTube video working. Go back to your homepage. Right now, this link is opening the YouTube video in the same window as the homepage. I want the YouTube video to open in its own window, like this, automatically. To do this, go back into index.html in Sublime. Then after you set the href attribute, set target equals underscore blank. Save index.html and refresh your homepage. Click on the link. The YouTube video is now automatically opening in a new tab. The website that we're making will have social media icons. Let's get these social media icons onto the homepage. First off, go to your desktop and in your Learn App Code Project 1 folder, create a new folder, call it Images. Go to this video's resource section. Download these social media icons. Save them in your Images folder. To link to these Twitter, GitHub, and Facebook icons, I'm going to use an image tag. Open index.html in Sublime. So type img then set the source equal to where your images are stored. And again, this is relative to where index.html is currently stored. So I need to go into the images folder and then link to each social media icon. So for the Facebook icon, source will equal images and then facebook.png. And I'll put the alternative text equal to Facebook. Copy this first image tag and then paste it below. The second image tag on line 23 will connect to github.png and then the alternative text will be GitHub. Copy the image tag one more time, paste below. This image tag source will connect to twitter.png. So change that like this and the alternative text will be Twitter. So save index.html and refresh your homepage. We now have these 3 social media icons displaying correctly. However, I don't want these to just be images. I want these links to take the user to my social media accounts. So to do that, we need to go back into index.html and surround these image tags with A tags. I'm just going to copy an entire opening A tag on line 17 and I'll paste it on line 21 and I'll just tab it in like that. Then I'll close this A tag below my Facebook image icon and then I'll need to change the href attribute to go to my actual social media page. So you'll have to change this to go to your page. So for example, it'll be facebook.com/learnappcode. We also need to do this for the GitHub icon and the Twitter icon. So I'll copy line 21, paste below, and this will go to github.com/learnappcode. And then I need to close that A tag. And then finally, on line 29, paste in the A tag again, and this will go to twitter.com/learnappcode. And I need to make sure I close that A tag as well. So just remember that image tags don't need a corresponding closing tag like most other HTML tags do. The image tag source is set to the path where the image is stored, as we did here. So these source links are correct and should work. Again, the alternative text is just displayed if the link is broken or as a part of accessibility for anyone who is visually impaired. Also, Google uses the alternative text of an image to help know what the image is. As a result, adding alternative text helps with the search engine optimization of your site. So we also made these images into links that go to the correct URL of your social media account. Save index.html, refresh your browser. I now have the icons for Facebook, GitHub, and Twitter displaying. Because I added an A tag around each image, there are also links. If you click on them, they'll take you to the href you set in index.html. The site's HTML structure is starting to come together. In the next video, we'll start working on the site's style. Let's add some CSS. In Sublime, open index.html. In the head, there's this link to the CSS file, style.css. Again, href sets the source of the file that is being linked. So, from index.html, the link is set to look inside the folder CSS, then link to style.css. So that's how that link works. Let's add some CSS that will be selectively applied to this div called container. Remember, you could have named this division, tag, class, anything that you want. I chose to name this div container. In Sublime, under CSS, open style.css. Here I've added some CSS that will add style to everything inside the body tag. I want everything in the division tag with class container to have a black background. So in style.css, type background black. Refresh your homepage. Now the container has a black background. It makes it easier to see its dimensions. Back in style.css, let's make all of the text in the body white. So type color white. I'll also add some padding to the container. Padding adds space inside of the element, so like here, while margin adds space outside of the element, like here. You'll see what I mean. Don't worry too much about this distinction. Just play around with padding and margin until it looks the way you want. So I'll add some padding in the container, and this will be 15 pixels of padding all around on each side of the container. And again, remember that padding adds space inside of the element. I'm also going to change the font size of my header 1 element, so type H1, add some new CSS, H1, font size, let's do 100 pixels. Save style.css. Refresh Chrome. The text is now white and visible on the black background. The H1 tag is also larger because I set it to 100 pixels. Also, there's 15 pixels of padding all along the inside of this division. I want to get rid of these lines in between each image. These lines are there because these images are now links. So in style.css, to get rid of those lines, it'll be applied to the A tags, and we'll set text decoration to none. Save style.css, refresh Chrome, the lines between each image is gone. In the next video, we'll add a background image to this page, and continue to make it look better. In this video, we added custom CSS to our homepage. In style.css, let's add a background image. In the body, add the CSS property background. To set the background URL, we need to figure out the path. Right now, we're in the CSS folder, but I'm going to store my background image in the images folder. So to go back one directory, you use // Now we'd be in learn app code project 1 folder. Then we want to connect to images. So type images. Finally, we need to select our background image and then put it in this images folder. A great website to get free background images is subtlepatterns.com. I'm going to download the seamless paper texture pattern because I really like it. So to download it, just hit the download button, and then once it's downloaded, unzip it. Make sure your new background image is saved or dragged into your images folder. I'll copy the name of my new background image, open index.html, and paste in your background image name. Now, I don't need any of this CSS from lines 6 to 8 because that's just used to make a small image full screen. We don't need that. So again, this background URL link starts in the CSS folder because that's where style.css is. So we're telling it to go back a directory into the learn app code project directory, then go into the image folder, and again, a folder is the same thing as a directory, and finally we're linking to the background image. So make sure you save style.css and refresh your homepage. The background image is displayed. In this video, we added a background image. The site is looking much better. In the Ruby on Rails part of the course, we'll make a blog that's responsive, so that the web page will properly display on any size screen. But in this video, we added a background image to our website. I'm going to show you how to use Google Chrome's Inspect Element feature to find a color that you might like to put on your site. So download Google Chrome and then find a color you might like. I really like how Subtle Patterns uses this white color with black text. In Google Chrome, if you right click, you could inspect this element and then you could see what background color they're using. This is the RGBA scale. I'll explain more about that in a moment. But to get this background color on your site, copy this color, open style.css, and delete black on line 13, paste in your new color, and we just need one semicolon. And I don't want the body to be white anymore. I want it to have black text. So now we have our new background color, and the body will now have black text. Refresh your homepage. This is looking much better. The div with class container should be centered on this page. To do that, open style.css and change the margin to auto. Then change the width to 50%. Refresh your homepage. Now the division with class container is centered. Let's talk a bit about color. Up until now, we've described color using words, like here. This is okay, but it only allows for you to use very defined colors. But what if you wanted a slightly lighter green color or a different shade of blue? Each different color has a number associated to it. You could use what's called a hexadecimal system to get the exact color you want. So you could Google hexadecimal color picker, pick any shade of any color you want. You could either copy the number with the pound and paste it in to style.cs, refresh the page, you'll then get that color, or you could use the RGB color like I had done earlier. A lot of different websites out there that could help you choose colors. One really good website is Color Lovers, and if you look at palettes, you could see different colors that they recommend go well together. I'm going to go back to that original color I chose earlier. In this video, we centered our div, changed the background color and the body text color, and then I explained to you the different ways you could select a specific color of your choice and how to implement that into your project. In style.css, let's add a background image. In the body, add the CSS property background. To set the background URL, we need to figure out the path. Right now, we're in the CSS folder, but I'm going to store my background image in the images folder. So to go back one directory, you use // Now we'd be in learn app code project 1 folder. Then we want to connect to images. So type images. Finally, we need to select our background image and then put it in this images folder. A great website to get free background images is subtlepatterns.com. I'm going to download the seamless paper texture pattern because I really like it. So to download it, just hit the download button, and then once it's downloaded, unzip it. Make sure your new background image is saved or dragged into your images folder. I'll copy the name of my new background image, open index.html, and paste in your background image name. Now, I don't need any of this CSS from lines 6 to 8 because that's just used to make a small image full screen. We don't need that. So again, this background URL link starts in the CSS folder because that's where style.css is. So we're telling it to go back a directory into the learn app code project directory, then go into the image folder, and again, a folder is the same thing as a directory, and finally we're linking to the background image. So make sure you save style.css and refresh your homepage. The background image is displayed. In this video, we added a background image. The site is looking much better. In the Ruby on Rails part of the course, we'll make a blog that's responsive. so that the web page will properly display on any size screen. But in this video, we added a background image to our website. I'm going to show you how to use Google Chrome's Inspect Element feature to find a color that you might like to put on your site. So download Google Chrome and then find a color you might like. I really like how Subtle Patterns uses this white color with black text. In Google Chrome, if you right click, you could inspect this element and then you could see what background color they're using. This is the RGBA scale. I'll explain more about that in a moment. But to get this background color on your site, copy this color, open style.css, and delete black on line 13, paste in your new color, and we just need one semicolon. And I don't want the body to be white anymore. I want it to have black text. So now we have our new background color, and the body will now have black text. Refresh your homepage. This is looking much better. The div with class container should be centered on this page. To do that, open style.css and change the margin to auto. Then change the width to 50%. Refresh your homepage. Now the division with class container is centered. Let's talk a bit about color. Up until now, we've described color using words, like here. This is okay, but it only allows for you to use very defined colors. But what if you wanted a slightly lighter green color or a different shade of blue? Each different color has a number associated to it. You could use what's called a hexadecimal system to get the exact color you want. So you could Google hexadecimal color picker, pick any shade of any color you want. You could either copy the number with the pound and paste it in to style.cs, refresh the page, you'll then get that color, or you could use the RGB color like I had done earlier. A lot of different websites out there that could help you choose colors. One really good website is Color Lovers, and if you look at palettes, you could see different colors that they recommend go well together. I'm going to go back to that original color I chose earlier. In this video, we centered our div, changed the background color and the body text color, and then I explained to you the different ways you could select a specific color of your choice and how to implement that into your project. Let's talk about how to make this white background transparent. We won't use hexadecimal code for this. Instead, we'll use RGB. So follow along. Open style.css and on line 13, change 0.8 to 0.5. This is the third way you can include color. To reiterate, the most common way is to use hexadecimal, like here. RGBA stands for red, green, blue, and the A is for alpha. This white background color is 255, 255, 255. That's the red, green, blue part. And the 0.5 is the opacity. So if I make it 1, that sets it to full opacity. Save style.css, refresh your homepage, and you can see background is even more opaque now. 0.8 would be a little less opaque, and 0.5 is half opacity. So you could get your RGB values from Google and other sources like I showed you earlier. All you have to do is select the color you want, copy and paste your RGB value over to your CSS file, like I showed you earlier, and just make sure it's formatted properly, just like this, and then you refresh your homepage, and you can see that worked. So I'm going to leave it as I had it at the previous color, but I'll leave it at half opacity so you can see the background coming through. Now if you want your background to have different transparencies, you know how to use RGBA to do so. Let's talk about fonts. If not otherwise specified, by default, Times New Roman is often chosen as the default font. To change this, you can add font family to the body, and then you could change the font. For example, I can change the font to Arial. Save style.css. Refresh the homepage. All the text in the body now has its font as Arial. In the past, the font selection was limited to only about 19 web fonts. Now we have access to thousands of fonts on the web. That gives designers a lot of freedom. I'm going to show you how to access these other fonts. So if you go to cssfontstack.com, this shows all the web-safe fonts, meaning that you can feel safe knowing that these will work on any browser. Let's try out Monaco. Click on Monaco, copy the CSS font family line, open style.css, and delete the old font family on line 4 and paste in the new one. All these fonts after Monaco are fallback fonts. This means that if the browser doesn't recognize the first font, it will use the next one until it finds one it recognizes. Usually you just choose one or two fallback fonts. So I'm just going to delete these two in the middle and just leave it like that. I'm going to use Helvetica, so just click on Helvetica, copy the CSS, open style.css and paste it in. Make sure you have the comma, the semicolon, and the colon like usual. Save style.css. Now we have Helvetica as the font on our homepage. In this video, I showed you how to add custom fonts to your website. I'm going to show you how to round the corners of this div by using border radius. What this will be doing is putting the border radius corners in a container to make these corners round. Open style.css. You can make your corners rounded by adjusting in pixels. We'll change the border radius to 10 pixels. Type in .container border-radius 10 pixels. Save style.css. Refresh your homepage. The division class container now has rounded borders. Feel free to play around with different pixels to see what you like. For now, I'm just going to stick with this. In this tutorial, we gave this container rounded borders using some CSS and setting the border radius. Let's embed a video. We're going to do this from YouTube. You could use any YouTube video you want, but I'll use this Get a Hobby with John Unsworth video. So first, I'm just going to grab the title, open index.html, and I'm just going to paste the title into my paragraph tag just to give him credit for the video. Then, go back to your YouTube video you want and go to embed. Copy all of this code. Go back to index.html and paste the code below your paragraph tag. Save index.html. Refresh your homepage. Great, the video is coming through and it works. However, I want this Facebook icon to be down here with the other icons. To fix this, go back into index.html and we'll break on a new line by surrounding all these A tags with the paragraph tag. Make sure you close that paragraph tag and I'll just tab it in. A good tip is if you highlight code, then on Mac, press Command and the right curly bracket, you could tab it all in at once. The tabbing is just for organization. Save index.html, refresh your homepage, and now the Facebook icon is where it's supposed to be. In this tutorial, we embedded a YouTube video onto our homepage. We then fixed our icons. Now that we know how to do this, we can use the same principle to include videos, widgets, or maps from different sites on the internet onto our page. I'm going to introduce a few resources that can help you if you run into problems. Stack Overflow is a question and answer site where people ask questions related to code and developers answer them. So if you run into problems, you could Google the issue and there will usually be a Stack Overflow thread that could help you work out the problem. Another good resource, Mozilla Developer Network. If you get stuck, you can look through the documentation here. It provides a lot of helpful advice. W3 Schools is so-so. For some of the basic HTML and CSS questions you might have, it can be okay, but there's often errors, so I would be careful with this one. Anyway, those are just 3 resources you could look to if you run into any issues coding. But usually if you just Google your problem, most times you'll find a solution. There's many sites that provide great coding advice. There are a few different ways you can center content on a page. If not otherwise specified, things will fall to the left by default. I'm going to center all this text. Type text-align center. Save style.css, refresh your homepage. The text on the page is centered. I'm going to adjust the margin. Open style.css, type a 0 next to the margin, and leave auto. Margin 0 auto sets your top and bottom margin at 0, and your left and right margin as automatic. Refresh your homepage. If you want to move this box right, you could type float right. Save style.css, refresh your page, and now the box is pushed to the right. Float left is redundant because things float to the left by default. I'm going to leave mine centered. And again, this margin 0 auto is centering it. If you float too many things, you could run into issues. So right now, I would just make sure you only float 1 or 2 things at once. To fix these problems, you could use something called clearfix, and we'll discuss that in a future video. But in this video, we just went over how to center text, divs, and how to float objects on your page. We'll add a Facebook like button. Make sure you're logged into your Facebook account. Then go to developers.facebook.com. Click on the Documents link. Then click on Social Plugins. Click on Like, Share, Send, and Quote. Under the like button heading, click on Web. Then click on Like Button Configurator. Put the URL that you want to like. I'll just leave this as this default URL for now. You should copy, then paste the domain that you want the like button for. I'll leave the defaults. I'm going to get rid of the share button, and I'll get rid of show friends faces. I'll leave the rest of the defaults as is. Click Get Code. There's 2 ways to include the like button. You could use JavaScript and HTML, or you could use this iframe that Facebook gives you. I'm just going to use the iframe because it's 1 step as opposed to 2. So click this tab and copy the entire iframe. Open index.html, paste the iframe wherever you want the like button to appear. I'll put mine on line 36, right below this closing paragraph tag. Save index.html, refresh your homepage. We now have a like button on our site, and it works. In this video, we added a Facebook like button to our site. Soon, we'll use Heroku to put a website online, so it could be seen by anyone and not just us on our local computer. We are going to learn how to set up a page with the main section and sidebar. So download all the files attached to this lecture, then drag them to your desktop. It'll be these three files: index.html, normalize.css, and style.css. On your desktop, create a new folder, name this folder Learn App Code Project 2. Then drag these three files into Learn App Code Project 2. And again, these files are attached to this lecture. In the Learn App Code Project 2 file, just for some organization, create a new folder and call it CSS. Then put normalize and style.css into this folder. Open index.html in Sublime by dragging it into the Sublime icon. To create the layout of this site, we will begin by starting in the body. Create a div tag here, and remember, div stands for division. This allows us to divide our page up into different sections: the header, main, sidebar, and footer. We use this div tag very often, so to keep things clear, we give it a unique name each time we use it. The first div that we created is container. We'll use this container to center all of our content on our page. Inside of our container, let's add a div for header, main, and footer. Inside div container, add another div and close it, and give this one an ID of header. Then copy the header div from lines 20 to 21, paste twice, and just make sure it's organized. And this div on line 23 will give an ID of main. The div on line 26 will give an ID of footer. Now that we have our divisions in place, we can add our content. Let's start with an h1 tag in the header. Close the h1 tag and have it say page layout. Then create an h2 in main and close that h2, and then I'll just put my heading. Also, make sure you download the photo called sunset.jpg that's attached to this lecture. Then, in your Learn App Code Project 2 folder, create a new folder, call it images, and store your photo in the images folder. Now go back into Sublime Text and let's display this photo. I'll display it right under the heading. So type in image tag. The source will be images sunset.jpg. And I'll give it alternative text of sunset. Finally, put a paragraph tag and close it, and then just go to a lorem ipsum generator, and I'll just add some dummy text, and I'll paste that into my paragraph tag. Then I just want to see what it would look like if I had another blog post, so I'll just put another h2 tag. This time the heading will say second blog post, and I'll put the same dummy text. So now that we have our divisions in place, we can add our content. We started with an h1 tag, then created an h2 tag in the division tag with ID main. We then added an image and some paragraph text. Add some content to your footer. So paragraph tag created by you. In the next video, I'll show you how to format and style this page with CSS. Right now our project looks like this. Let's continue working on it by adding some style. So let's lay out our divs now. Open style.css, hashtag container. And you do this because it's an ID. I'll tell you more about the difference between IDs and classes later. Hashtag container because it's an ID, or dot container if it's a class. But like I said, we'll get more into that later. So for now, let's just lay out all our IDs. We'll do the same for the div with ID header, main, and footer. So hashtag header, hashtag main, and hashtag footer. Let's add some color to each division so we can see where each section starts and ends. That'll help us style it. So for the header, I'll add a CSS background property, and I'll make it blue. For main, I'll make the background purple. The footer's background will be silver. Refresh your homepage. Now that we can see our sections, we need to use the div with ID container to center our content. First, we need to give the container a width. Let's try 1000 pixels. Refresh your homepage. The container now has its width constrained, but it's aligned to the left side of the page. We now need to use margin 0 auto to center it on the page. So in style.css, type margin 0, 0, auto, 0, auto. So now the margin on the left and right is automatically adjusted for, but the margin on the top and bottom is kept to 0. Let's add some padding to these other divisions just to make them stand out a little more. Copy line 15 and paste it on line 20 and 25. Save style.css, refresh your homepage. Great, now the header, main, and footer divisions stand out a little more. We're now going to add a sidebar. Open index.html, and between the div with ID main and the div footer on line 34, add another div and close it, and this div will have an ID equal to sidebar. I'm going to add a list that will end up being our blog archives. Add an h3 tag to div sidebar and close it, and I'll just have this header3 tag say sidebar. Then I'll add an unordered list and close that, and inside that unordered list, I'll add some list items and make sure I close the list item. And these will just be blog post dates. So I added some content to the sidebar. I added an h3 tag that said sidebar, and I also added an unordered list with some list items. This will look like a blog archive. An unordered list gives you a bulleted list of items. Save index.html, refresh your homepage. We now have this sidebar. I want this sidebar to be on the right side of the page, so let's start working on that. To move this sidebar over to the right, we need to decrease the width of this main section to create space on the right. So open style.css and reduce the width of your main section to 700 pixels. So on line 21, type width 700 pixels. Let's also add a color to our sidebar so that we can see the boundaries of it. So in style.css on line 24, write hashtag sidebar because we're applying CSS to this div with ID sidebar. Then put a background color, and I'll use orange. Save style.css, refresh your homepage. So we now have this main heading with a reduced width, and the sidebar is orange to help us better visualize. But the sidebar still has a width of 100% of the overall container, which is why it's not fitting in the space to the right of this main section. In order to have the main and sidebar element fit into the container, the sum of their width should be equal or less than the container width. So open style.css, right now the container width is 1000 pixels, and the main section width is 700 pixels. 1000 minus 700 is 300, but this main section also has 50 pixels of padding on the left and right side. So therefore, it's really like 1000 pixels minus 800. So we have 200 pixels to fit the sidebar in on the right side of the main container. So that's no problem, we could do that. In style.css, set the width of the sidebar div to 200 pixels. Also, let's float our main section and our sidebar to the left. Save style.css, refresh your homepage. Your sidebar and footer has popped up to this right-hand side. We'll fix this in a moment. But you might be wondering why we floated this main div and the sidebar to the left. Think of float as a vacuum on the left side of the page that keeps pulling things to the left. It will pull this main section to the left and the sidebar to the left. And if there's room, it will pull the rest of the elements up to the left as well. We don't want the footer on this side of the page. So we need to stop float from working on the footer. To do that, in index.html, add a new div tag on line 42. Make sure you open and close the tag, then give it a class equal to clear. This tells it to stop floating or pulling things up. To have this work, you need to have some code written in your CSS for this class clear. Open style.css and you will see you already have some code that's been pre-written. You target the class of CSS with dot. We have clear as both. A couple things to remember here for creating columns. Use float left, and whenever you float columns, you will always need to use clear. So let's test this out. Make sure everything's saved, refresh your homepage, and now only the sidebar is being floated on the right side of the page. In this tutorial, we got this sidebar positioned correctly on the page. You may want to have an image with text going on either side of it. You could use float to make that happen. Open style.css and also index.html. We'll be using float to target this image tag. In style.css, type img and then float, and let's try floating it left. Save style.css, refresh your homepage. Since the image is being floated left, the text is on the right. Let's try floating it right. Save style.css, refresh your homepage, and now the image is floated to the right, so the text is on the left. Things start to get a little more confusing when you want one image to float left, but another image to float right. This is because we're applying CSS to the image element. And every image on the page is going to get whatever CSS property we apply to it. Just spend a little time clarifying the differences between IDs and classes. By the end of this lecture, you should know when to use an ID and when to use a class. The main thing to remember is with IDs, you can only use a certain ID name once per page. So for example, I couldn't call this div header. It would have to be something like header2. You can have multiple classes with the same name. So for example, I could apply class clear to any other HTML element, and that'd be totally fine. I'll show you the implications of this. If for example, we made this h2 have a class equal to green, and we have this h2 with a class equal to green as well, then if you open style.css, you could write dot green, again because it's a class, If it was an ID, and for the CSS, you do hashtag and then the ID name, and it's a class, so we'll do .green, and we can set the color to green. Save style.css and make sure index.html is saved as well, then refresh your homepage. Now both of the H2s with class green are green. This illustrates why it's helpful to use classes, because now we can apply the same CSS to any HTML element and have that CSS work. Whereas if we used an ID, because you can't reuse the same ID name on the same HTML page, every time we'd want class green, we'd have to write more CSS. Like we've seen, with a class, we can now just keep applying that CSS. Now you should see that using classes instead of IDs can save you a lot of time because you're going to just keep reusing that style for that class on the same HTML page. I just want to fix this text on the home page. It's a little too close to the image. We'll add some margin to the image. Open style.css and type margin. Let's try 15 pixels. Save style.css, refresh your homepage. Now you can see that the text is further away from the image. By writing the margin this way, just with the 15 pixels, you're adding 15 pixels of margin to all sides of the image. If you only want to put margin on certain sides of the image, all you have to do is write it like this. It works like a clock. The first number is the top margin, the second is the right margin, the third is the bottom margin, and the fourth is the left margin. So margin 0, 15 pixels, 15 pixels 0 will give 15 pixels on the right hand side of the image and 15 pixels of margin on the bottom of the image, and there'll be 0 pixels of margin on the top and left of the image. Padding works the same way as well. Let's see how this works. Save style.css, refresh your page, and there you go. We have 15 pixels of margin on the right and bottom of the image. I liked it how we had it before, so I'll just switch it back. Now you know how to specify the margin and padding that you want. Now that you know the fundamentals of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, let's use Twitter Bootstrap to make a better looking and fully responsive blog. Just so you know, all that Twitter Bootstrap is a framework that has pre-written HTML, CSS, and JavaScript classes that's all documented on this site, getbootstrap.com. We can then use these pre-written classes on our website to make our site look much better more quickly. So this is the website we're going to make. It's a blog, it looks pretty nice, but the main difference is it's fully responsive. So if you make the window size larger or smaller, it will automatically change its layout to fit that window size. Therefore, this fully responsive blog will be able to work on any screen size, including phones or tablets. The site we make will also run both locally and on Heroku, so everyone can go to your website. To help keep track of our updated code, we will use GitHub throughout the project for version control. You need to make sure you have Rails installed. Go to installrails.com. Before we can get started building, you need to follow the installation guide for whatever operating system you are currently using. I've already gone through the OS X installation process. I don't need to do this again, but before I start building my Rails app, I'll make sure that I have everything installed. Open your terminal. First, I'll ensure I have the correct version of Ruby installed. Type ruby-v. Ruby needs to be version 2 point something. Next, I need to check what version of Rails I have installed. Type Rails-v. Rails needs to be version 5 point something. I also need to check what version of Git I have installed. Type git-version. Git should be version 1.7.10 or higher. If you need to install Git, Rails, or Ruby, please go back to installrails.com. If you have Git, Rails, and Ruby installed, then you are ready to create a Rails app. In this tutorial, we'll generate a Rails app. First, I need a directory to store my app in. On the desktop, create a new folder. Call it learn_Rails. Then, open your terminal. Type ls to list out all the folders and files in this directory. And remember, a directory is the same thing as a folder. So I want to navigate to the Learn Rails directory that we just created. First, we need to change into the desktop directory. To change directories, type cd desktop. List out all the folders in your desktop directory, and we can see Learn Rails. Cd into your Learn Rails directory. Right now there's nothing inside of Learn Rails. I want to ensure I'm not already in a Git repository. Type git status. It says fatal, not a Git repository. This is good. This is what we want to see, because this means we're not already in a Git repository. We'll create a Git repository later. To generate a new Rails app, type Rails new, and then the name of your app. You could call it anything you want, but I'll call my app Learn Rails Blog. Rails is now creating the projects folders, and files. Rails uses gems to set the project up. Gems are pre-written software. Now that the Rails project has been created, run ls. I can see the project directory, Learn Rails blog. You could also see the Learn Rails blog directory if you go into your Learn Rails folder. cd into Learn Rails blog. Run ls to list out the files and folders inside of Learn Rails blog. I can see the contents of this directory. To start the local Rails server, run Rails server. Copy localhost 3000, open a browser, and paste this URL in. I can see a screen that says, "Yay, you're on Rails." Great, the Rails app is up and running locally. To shut down the local Rails server, open terminal and hit Ctrl-C. I want the project to use version control. Version control is helpful because if we make a mistake, we can go back to an earlier version of the project. We'll use git for version control. To create a new git repository, run git init, then run git status. I know I'm in a git repository because instead of seeing fatal, not a git repository, I now see the files that I need to commit. To add all these files to the staging area, type git add dot. To commit these stage files, type git commit -m. And then within double quotes, you could type anything you want, but I'll put generated Rails app. Hit enter, then type git status again. It says nothing to commit. Working tree is clean. All of the project's files are up to date with version control. Like I mentioned earlier, version control is helpful because if we make a mistake, we can go back to an earlier version. Type git log. I can see the project's first commit. In this tutorial, we created a new Rails app and git repository. Open your terminal. Make sure you're in the Learn Rails blog directory. To run your local server, type Rails server. Copy HTTP all the way through to localhost 3000. Paste this URL into your browser. We get this default page. Let's create a custom homepage. Creating a new homepage involves a few steps. First, we need to create a new root. The root will point to a controller. The controller will then render a view. However, before we do any of this, we need to set up our text editor. So open Sublime Text, click Project, then Save Project As, navigate to your desktop, click on Learn Rails, and save this project as learn_rails.sublime-project. Hit Save. In Sublime, click Project, add folder to project. Navigate back to Learn Rails, click Learn Rails blog. Hit Open. Everything from this folder is now on the sidebar. Now that we have Sublime set up, let's start to create our custom homepage. Under Config, open roots.rb. Anything after a hashtag is a comment. If code is commented out, it won't run. I'll leave the comments for now. We're going to create a new root for the homepage. On line 3, just above end, type root pages hashtag home. When a user goes to the home page, a request is sent to the site server. This new root directs the request to the page's controller's home method, where it will be handled. Save roots.rb. In your browser, refresh localhost 3000. We get an error that says uninitialized constant pages controller. This error is saying that the app doesn't have a controller called pages. We need to create a new controller. We could generate a controller in two different ways. We could get Rails to automatically generate a controller for us. However, Rails would also add a bunch of other files that we don't need. Let's create our controller a different way. Go back into Sublime, go into App, and then right-click on Controllers. Hit New File, and save this file in App Controllers as pages_controller.rb. In the bottom right-hand corner of Sublime, make sure it is on Ruby, and then also make sure you're indenting using spaces. And I'll put my tab width to 2. Now let's make our pages controller. Type class pages controller less than application controller, and then in Ruby on Rails you have to end that class. And then we'll create our method called home. So def home, and we'll end that method. The Ruby interpreter takes into account the punctuation and spacing of the code. So make sure your code is formatted just like mine. But don't worry, any code I show you will be attached to its corresponding video. We created a class called pages controller. This class inherits the properties of the application controller. Inheriting from the application controller will help make the pages controller work. The application controller is located in the same app controllers directory. Inside the pages controller, we defined a method called home. The class pages controller and the method home both have an end. In order for a user to see the home page, a view must be rendered. Rails will by default render the view method name.html.erb. So the home method will automatically render a view called home.html.erb. So make sure you've saved this file, and now we need to create the home view. Under App, Views, create a new folder, call it Pages. In the Pages folder, we'll put the view associated with the Pages controller. So right-click on the Pages folder and hit New File, and make sure this file is being saved inside App, Views, Pages, and we'll save this file as home.html.erb. Home.html.erb is an HTML file. However, adding .erb allows us to add Ruby's embedded syntax. In home.html.erb, type on line 1, hello world. Save this file, open your browser, and refresh the home page. Awesome! Hello world is displayed. In this video, we made a simple home page. We did this by creating a root, which points to the Pages controller's home method. Lastly, we created a new view for the home page. Let's save these changes with git. Open terminal, exit out of your server with Control-C, then type git status. These are the files we have modified and added. Type git add dot. All these new and modified files are now staged for commit. To commit these changes, type git commit -m. Inside double quotes, I'll put created a simple home page. Press enter, run git status, nothing to commit. The working directory is clean. In your browser, go to github.com. Create a free account, then log in. I want to push the app to GitHub. A GitHub repository will allow us to back up the code. First, we have to make a new repository. So from the top right corner, click on the plus button, then click New Repository. Give your repository a name. I'll call mine Learn Rails Payments. Leave the description blank. It will be a public repository. To set it to a private repository, I would have to have a paid account. I don't want a README file. Click the green Create Repository button. I now have a GitHub repository. The repository's URL is listed here. Keep the URL as HTTPS. Scroll down the page to push an existing repository from the command line. Copy git remote add origin with your URL. Open terminal, paste in. This command sets Git's origin to this URL. Now I can type the word origin instead of the full URL. Just a quick side note, if any Windows users get an error saying origin already exists, paste in the same command, but replace add with set URL. So again, for any Windows users who get stuck, try running set URL origin and then your URL. Go back to your browser, copy git push origin master, open terminal, paste it in, and run the command. You will be prompted to enter your GitHub username and password. My local Git repository has now been pushed to GitHub. In your browser, go to your GitHub repository. My local Git repository has now been pushed to GitHub. Click on the Commits tab. I can see the different commits. In this tutorial, I created a GitHub repository. Then, I pushed the local code to it. I want to use Bootstrap to make the app look better. The first thing I need to do is add Bootstrap's gem to the gem file. Open up your gem file, and on line 17 I'll add a comment, add Twitter Bootstrap, and then underneath it I'll add the gem for Bootstrap. Save the gem file, open your terminal, and run git status. I have modified the gem file. Remember that the gem file tells Rails what gems the app needs. To have Rails install these gems and their dependencies, I need to run bundle install. Type bundle install. Whenever a new gem is added to the project, the local Rails server needs to be restarted. I'm going to add some CSS to the project. Open Sublime, and in App, Assets, Style Sheets, create a new file. Save it as bootstrap_custom.css.scss. SCSS stands for Sassy CSS. I will use SCSS to generate a cascading style sheet. All you need to know is that SCSS extends CSS's functionality. In bootstrap_custom.css.scss, I need to import Bootstrap. So type on line 1, at import bootstrap. Make sure you have a semicolon at the end. Save this file, open your browser, and refresh the homepage. Because Bootstrap is installed, the homepage font looks slightly different. View this page's source code. On line 8, you can see that Rails has linked to Bootstrap Custom. This is the file we just created. Click on this link. We can see all of Bootstrap's CSS. Bootstrap has been successfully added to the project. In this tutorial, I added Bootstrap's gem to the app. In the next video, I'll use Bootstrap to make the app look better. Let's start the process of making the app look better. We'll need to add some JavaScript, CSS, and HTML. Go to bootstrap.com, click on Getting Started. From the right sidebar, click Examples. Scroll down to the blog. Click on the blog, right-click, and View Page Source. Copy all of this HTML. In Sublime, under App, Views, Layouts, open application.html.erb. Then, under Pages, open home.html.erb. Delete Hello World on line 1. Paste in the new code. Open application.html.erb. The contents of home.html.erb are rendered through the yield tag on line 12. Yield is in a body tag. Therefore, I need to make home.html.erb only contain code that should be in a body tag. So go back to home.html.erb, delete everything from line 1 to the opening body tag on line 35, then delete from the closing body tag on 144 to the closing HTML tag on line 145. Save home.html.erb. Now, the only HTML in home.html.erb is the content of the body tag. The view home.html.erb is now structured correctly to be yielded in the body tag of application.html.erb. Refresh your homepage. The homepage will still not look like this blog design because we haven't linked to the CSS files yet. In the next tutorial, we'll continue the process of making the app look better. But if we make a mistake, we want to be able to go back to this point. So before we continue, let's update Git. Open terminal, run git status. To add these files to the staging area, run git add dot. Then run git commit -m started adding homepage design. My working directory is now clean. We'll push this up to GitHub later. In the next tutorial, let's continue the process of meshing the front-end design with our Rails app. I want our homepage to look more like the design. We need to copy some more code. From the Get Bootstrap blog example, view the page source again, and copy everything from meta charset UTF-8 all the way down to line 21 that links to blog.css. So copy all that. In Sublime, under App, Views, Layouts, open application.html.erb. Paste on line 4 after the opening head tag. Cut the title on line 22, delete the title on line 12, paste in the cut title. Previously, we added the Bootstrap gem to the app, so we can delete this link on line 15 and the comment on line 14. This Internet Explorer workaround isn't hugely necessary, so let's delete line 15 and 16 for now. On line 15, I can see that I need to save the style sheet log.css. On line 18, this style sheet link tag automatically imports local style sheets. We need the style sheet blog.css. So in the view page source code for the blog example, click on blog.css on line 21. Then hit File, Save Page As, navigate into your Learn Rails blog project, save blog.css under App, Assets, Style Sheets. On line 18, the style sheet link tag automatically imports local style sheets, so we don't need to manually import blog.css on line 15, so go ahead and delete it. Save application.css and make sure your local server is running. Open your browser and refresh localhost 3000. This is looking better. However, we still need to fix a few things. Let's commit these changes to Git. Open your terminal, exit the server, run git status, git add dot, git commit -m, added log.css. In this tutorial, we added log.css to the app and got the app looking better. I need to import Bootstrap's JavaScript. In Sublime, open app assets, JavaScript, open application.js. On line 12, after the 2 slashes, type equals require bootstrap. Save this file. In a future video, I'll be using Bootstrap's JavaScript. I want to make sure Bootstrap's JavaScript is being imported. Open your browser, refresh the home page. Right-click and view page source. You could see assets bootstrap.self.js. Rails automatically generated the link to this file. Bootstrap's JavaScript has been successfully imported. In this video, I added Bootstrap's JavaScript to the app. I want to simplify the layout of this blog, and then I want to upload it to Heroku so it's online and anyone on the internet can access it. In Sublime, open home.html.erb. Delete the navbar items from line 7 to 5. I'm just going to have a home and about page. Then scroll down to the bottom of home.html.erb and delete everything from line 133 to line 140. I deleted these scripts because when the page renders, Rails automatically imports the app's JavaScript. I'm going to delete the previous and next buttons. So delete everything from line 80 to line 85, save home.html.erb, refresh your home page. This is looking ready for Heroku. Open terminal, exit out of your server, run git status, git add dot, finally run git commit -m simplified the home page. Let's push the updated app to GitHub. Run git push origin master. Great. My code was successfully pushed to GitHub. Let's push these changes to Heroku. Run git push Heroku master. Copy your Heroku URL, open your browser, and go to your Heroku URL. My Heroku app looks the same as my local app. Again, the best part about Bootstrap is that it's responsive. It will adjust to fit any screen size. In this tutorial, we got our app online using Heroku. Now you know the fundamentals of HTML, CSS, and a little bit about JavaScript. You've also learned how to create a Ruby on Rails app, integrate it with Twitter Bootstrap, and get your project online with Heroku. Great job! In the next video, we're going to create the About page. When we click on this About link, it should work. Let's make the About page. Open Sublime Text. Under Config, open roots.rb. On line 4, type get, and then in single quotes, /about, then type an equal sign, greater than, pages, #about. So this root tells Rails what controller will handle the request when a user goes to the /about page. When a user goes to the /about page, Rails knows that the page's controller's about method should handle the request. We need to make this about method. In app controllers, open pagescontroller.rb. Let's add the about method. Type def about and add your end. Save pagescontroller.rb, and remember, by default, Rails will render the view method name.html.erb. So we need to create a view called about.html.erb. We'll create this view, so under Views, Pages, right-click and hit New File, and make sure that this file is being saved in the Pages directory as about.html.erb. Then, on line 1, I'll just write, this is the About page. Make sure everything is saved, refresh your home page, and instead, in your URL, type /about. We've been successfully redirected to the About page. We'll get this About navigation bar link working and make the About page look better. Let's get the About page looking nicer. In Sublime, under App Views, Pages, open About and Home.html.erb. Also open application.html.erb. I'm going to transfer some shared code from home.html.erb to application.html.erb. I'm doing this so the About page can inherit a lot of this shared code. I'll show you what I mean. In home.html.erb, let's start by making this a little less code dense. Let's delete this first blog post, delete everything from line 21, div class blog post, to line 52, the closing div tag. Then, cut everything from line 1, div class blog masthead, to line 10, div class container. In application.html.erb, paste on line 21 between the opening body tag and the yield tag. Close this div class container, open home.html.erb, and delete this closing div tag for container on line 74. Finally, copy everything from line 1, div class blog header, all the way down to the closing div tag on line 70. Open about.html.erb. Delete "This is the About page" on line 1 and paste in the new code. Go back to home.html.erb and cut the entire footer from line 73 to line 78. Open application.html.erb and paste the footer between the closing div tag and the closing body tag on line 33. Make sure all your files are saved and refresh your home page. It looks exactly the same because it's inheriting shared code such as the footer from application.html.erb. Refresh your About page. This is looking much better. Let's customize it. Open about.html.erb and let's delete another blog post. So delete everything from line 22 to line 34. Delete the Bootstrap blog on line 2 and instead change this header 1 tag to say About page. Also, change the header 2 tag on line 11 from another blog post to This is the About page. Make sure everything's saved, go to your browser, and refresh About. The About page is coming together nicely. In the next tutorial, we'll get the navbar working. Now that we have a home page and an About page, let's get the navbar working. Open application.html.erb. On line 26, let's add some embedded Ruby. Type less than %equal then, and then close this embedded Ruby tag with %greater than. Then type link_to, which is a Rails helper function, and in double quotes, put the name of the link. Make sure you have your comma, then type about_path. This will link to the root about. To get Twitter Bootstrap's log nav item class to make this link look correct, type class equals greater than log nav item. So copy the entire link on line 26 and paste above the about link. And we'll make this link say home, so we just need to change this to root, and this will link to the root path, and it will have the same Twitter Bootstrap class log nav item to make it look good. We can now delete these links on line 24 and 25 that don't work. This needs to go to the root_path. The link on line 24 will have clickable text that says home, and when you click on it, it will link to the root path. Make sure you've saved all your modified files and refresh your homepage. Everything looks the same, except now these navigation links will work. Let's save our updated code with Git and then push it to Heroku so we can see it working online. Open your terminal, quit out of your server, run git status to put all these files into the staging area for commit. Run git add prompts. Finally, to commit these changes, run git commit -add made and about. Let's push our updated app to Git and run git push origin master. Finally, to push the updated app to Heroku, run git push Heroku master. Copy your Heroku link and paste it into your browser. From the navbar, click on the About link. We're taken to the About page. Great! This blog is running with a working navigation with 2 working pages live on Heroku. You've learned the fundamentals of Ruby on Rails, HTML, and CSS. You also know how to use Heroku to put your app online so anyone can interact with it. Great job! I'll add some bonus content in the future.